So with that, I want to introduce Chris McNutt. So Chris actually is associated with an organization called Texas Gun Rights. And just to say a little bit of backdrop about all these different gun lobbies that exist. You know, I have the NRA sticker in the back of my truck. Sometimes I'm ashamed of it because the NRA doesn't do what they're supposed to do. And I just want to give you just a little bit of background about Texas Gun Rights and how it differs from some of these other organizations. Most people don't know that NRA does not seek to expand your gun rights. They basically seek to keep it where it is. Chris can correct me where I'm wrong, but I think generally that's more or less true. They don't hold the belief that we would hold as conservatives that something like the National Firearms Act is unconstitutional. It's unbelievably unconstitutional. It's been unconstitutional so it was put into place. And the idea that your Second Amendment rights protect your ability to basically have what amounts to the ability to protect your community against a tyrannical government. That's the reason that we have the Second Amendment. That philosophy is not propagated or articulated by the the NRA, National Rifle Association. GOA is quite a bit better in that they do kind of tend to push some of the envelope. But one of the things that's great about Texas Gun Rights and Lone Star Gun Rights and some of these other organizations that are here in the state, that they actually seek to expand your Second Amendment rights. You know, keeping things and basically holding the line. What we see is over time we're basically losing it year by year. So I think that I'm just really proud to have Chris come and talk from an organization that's actually fighting to expand our right to bear arms.
Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction. And to kind of piggyback off of something that Andy said earlier about the Bill of Rights, you know, that's something that I, as a Second Amendment advocate, fall into the trap, just always getting caught up in federal Bill of Rights. But I'm reminded by our own membership brochure. On the back of it, we've got the Texas Constitution, Article 1, Section 23, which says that every citizen shall have the right to keep and bear arms in the defense of himself or the state. So that is basically our Second Amendment at the state of Texas, and that's you know, very important that we always continue to follow that, because states' rights should matter a lot more than they do nowadays. So that was a great segue. So yeah, my name is Chris McNutt. I'm the executive director of Texas Gun Rights. And for those of y'all who aren't aware of you know, who we are, we're the state affiliate of the National Association for Gun Rights, which is based in Colorado. They are the second largest gun rights organization in the country. Actually, I'd like to say that we're the largest because we don't really consider the NRA a real gun organization, as Mr. Hopper alluded to. And here in the state of Texas, we've got over 300,000 members and supporters with Texas Gun Rights. And I guess going to the slide, just a little bit about my personal life. So that beautiful woman that was on the screen, yeah, right there. We went on our first date about 7 years ago, got engaged about 6 years ago, and now we've been married for about 4.5 years. And that's our dog Gunner, who will be 6 in January. So yeah, his name is appropriate for my profession. If you can go to the next slide. And, you know, if it wasn't already clear that I had married up and out of my league, yeah, God bless. So this is us at the machine gun room at the headquarters of the National Association for Gun Rights. I'm holding a P90, and my wife, Murphy, she is holding an FN SCAR, which I like to refer to as fully automatic dispensers of Liberty seeds. So, next slide. And this right here is Millie. She was born this past December, so she just turned 9 months old last week, and this is why I am more passionate than ever about what I do. It's about protecting this girl, especially with all the craziness that we've got going on in the world. Next slide. And to give you all a little bit of background about Texas Gun Rights and our work here in the Lone Star State over the past about a decade now at this point, is we were the original group to push constitutional carry in the state of Texas. Our original bill author, Jonathan Stickland, was one of the folks that we were, and actually I should have included former state senator Don Huffines. He carried the companion bill back in 2015. And then, of course, Representative Kyle Biederman carried the torch for us in 2021 after Stickland decided not to seek re-election. And of course, we've got the political establishment that we've been up against for gun rights in Texas, with Joe Strauss being the original, and then his hand-picked replacement, Dennis Bonnen, and then I'm sure many people here know who Drew Springer is. This is him chumming it up with them on the floor of the House a few years ago. And you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so Jonathan Stickland was our first bill sponsor in 2015. We drafted the legislation, had it filed, worked with him. Unfortunately, in 2015, it was Joe Strauss that killed the bill through his anti-gun appointments in the House Homeland Security Public Safety Committee. And then also on the floor of the House that year, that was when the open carry bill was moving. There were amendments to add constitutional carry, basically change the bill to constitutional carry. Strauss made that, ruled that non-germane, but somehow knife carry was germane to the open carry bill of handguns and not constitutional carry. So that was killed in 2015. We got in, we went into action in 2016 to hold Strauss and his folks accountable for their actions. So 2017, we get our first hearing on constitutional carry. This was for Jonathan's bill. I think that was 375 at the time, I can't remember. And that ended up getting killed in committee by Phil King, who was then the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. And so we go into another grueling primary and election season. Pushed the bill, pushed the needle on the Second Amendment, made constitutional carry an even bigger issue. 2019, though, we get a new speaker, and that is Dennis Bonnen. And he appointed an anti-gun Democrat to be chair of the House Homeland Security Committee. And we didn't get any movement on the bill, which is not a surprise because I think Pancho Navarro's was endorsed by Bloomberg's gun control groups. So that year we had no movement on the bill, and if you go to the next slide, I also had a very public dust-up with the speaker at the time because we were getting all of these false promises of quick hearings and the bill was going to move on this and this and this date. Me and grassroots activists from our organization, we went to the districts of Speaker Bonnen and his top lieutenants, like the chair of the House Calendars Committee. I think it was Dustin Burrows, who was the chairman of the Republican caucus at the time. And we went door to door, block walking, going to their donors, elected officials in their district who might want to run against them someday, and to our own members, just passing out flyers, letting them know, like, hey, these folks are holding up constitutional carry, call them. Well, when I got to Speaker Bonnen's house, I saw DPS out there. So I thought that was odd. I approached them and didn't think anything of it. Had a great conversation, asked if they could put the flyer on, or I asked if I could put the flyer on the door myself, and they volunteered to do it for me. So, okay, go about my day. A week later, all of a sudden, I'm plastered all across news stories for threatening legislators. All this crazy stuff, and basically Bonnen had found out that I was in those other districts prior to him because we're emailing out to our members, putting videos out, letting everybody know what we're doing because it's all above board. We're just trying to put political pressure. But he decided to set up a trap and basically try to blame me for the death of constitutional carry. Of course, we got our attorneys involved. The guy in the top right of the screen, that's Dave Warrington. He's a very high-dollar, high-powered attorney in D.C. that I think we pay him like $1,000 an hour. So we only use him for really big stuff. We basically had demanded apology for Bonnen. We had, there were many accusations thrown against me that I had brandished firearms, which I had proof that I flew on airlines and I never checked a firearm and stuff like that. So we had all this proof that he was completely lying, especially when DPS body cam footage came out, and we forced Bonnen to basically shut up, and he actually lawyered up. We found out through our own personal network. So he expected to get us to back down, run home with our tail in between our legs, but we doubled down, and then he shut up. And then he got himself into another controversy with Michael Quinn Sullivan, who many people might know in this room. He's a fellow conservative activist. Got caught up in another scandal, and he basically recorded the whole ordeal because of what happened to me, and it was enough to bring Bonin down, and he decided not to seek re-election because he basically had lost all of the trust from his Republican caucus. So go to the next slide. So that brings us to 2021. This was a very interesting year, as the first year after COVID, the great shutdown and freak out. And we didn't have Jonathan Stickland anymore in office. So Kyle Biederman was one of our other heroes and champions in the state legislature. And he filed our constitutional carry bill. But the different thing about this year is after everything that happened with Bonin and how much money we spent in the primaries that year holding Bonin's top lieutenants accountable, now all of a sudden we've got 6 competing bills to constitutional carry. A couple of them are actually pretty good. A couple of them, they were clearly watered down compromises that they were hoping that they could get through. But we had the political establishment on the edge. They knew that they had to do something. They were running out of excuses that, why can't a Republican-controlled legislature of 20 years pass pro-gun legislation that I think at the time was, in 2021, there were 20 other constitutional carry states at the time. So Texas at that point was just middle of the pack at best. And then, of course, Kyle Biederman's bill was not the ultimate bill that ended up passing. Representative Schaefer's House Bill 1927, which was more or less okay, ended up passing, and you can go to the next slide. Oh, click it one more time. Oh, that's weird, it didn't pop up. Okay. Well, anyways, there's some things that we need to fix with the bill. Schaefer worked with us to offer some amendments. So they are basically, at his initial bill, didn't allow, or it allowed municipalities, so local cities and local governments, to actually have their own little gun-free zones where constitutional carry wasn't allowed. So it kind of gutted the whole bill and the whole purpose of it if every city can basically rule it illegal. So he worked with us to fix that, and he also worked with us to add on Representative Slayton's amendment to allow carry for foster parents in their cars, because for whatever reason foster parents weren't allowed to constitutionally carry in the car. Is really stupid. But our other 3 amendments all got voted down. So for campus carry, allowing all legal adults to carry, so 18 to 20-year-olds, they can already legally carry a rifle, but handgun still can't under the constitutional carry law. That's kind of tied up in courts right now. A federal judge out of Fort Worth recently said that is legal, that there's no precedent for them to rule against that. And now DPS is appealing that. And then the last thing is you cannot constitutional carry on lands managed by the Lower Colorado River Authority, which is basically like, I don't know, a couple dozen state parks and stuff like that across central Texas. Really makes no sense. But it was just good enough to be constitutional carry, so we ended up supporting the bill and not just having to nuke it altogether, which would have confused the heck out of a lot of people. If you go to the next slide. So this is just a quick look of what our program looked like for 2021. So basically we've sent over 10 million emails, sent out over 138,000 pieces of mail, 112,000 text messages, delivered 118,000 petitions to all 150 state rep offices. So there's a lot of gun groups and conservative organizations in general. They'll always get you to sign petitions and stuff, but a lot of the times it's nothing more than them trying to cull your data and try to market to you. And while that's definitely an added benefit to that, we are one of the few organizations I've ever seen that actually makes good on our promise to deliver every single petition. So I like to pat myself on the back for that, because we're good stewards of our members. And but yeah, so all in all, in 2021, we spent over $200,000 mobilizing pro-gun Texans across the state, and not another gun organization came close to that amount, not even GOA. And overall, over the 10-year period fighting for constitutional carry between us and National Association for Gun Rights, we spent over $2 million on it. So go to the next slide. Oh, that's weird. I feel like there's a slide missing. Can you go to the next slide? Go back to. Okay. Well, it was a slide about Uvalde. So basically, as we know, leading up to this next session, the political climate is a little bit different. We just had the tragedy in Uvalde. There's constant shrinking of gun control from the left, and even some moderate Republicans nationally. And you would think that in a state like Texas that we would be safe, right? Well, these are headlines from 2019 when, after other tragedies, Governor Abbott called for the Texas Safety Commission, which was basically a gun control committee. He expressed, along with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, the sentiment that we need to ban, or we needed to ban all private sales and transactions of firearms, basically universal gun registration under the guise of background checks. And as you see, the Dallas Morning News has Lieutenant Governor Patrick quoted as saying that he would defy the NRA and take the lead on gun registration. So if you go to the next slide. The biggest threat, though, going forward, and actually I want to back up a little just to preface, the only reason I'm saying that right now, especially leading up to an election next month, is not to trash people and say and tell people how to vote. Election season is the most important time that you can actually call these politicians and hold them accountable and tell them absolutely do not cave to the anti-gun mob and pass gun control. That election time is the one time that they're going to really listen to you because they want your vote, and so that's really when it's time for them to stand firm. So obviously the biggest threat that we have, I think, coming into this upcoming legislative session are red flag gun confiscation laws. And back in 2018, Governor Abbott, he called initially for the study of that, of red flag laws. And of course, we shut that down. We delivered over 20,000 petitions to the Senate at the time. And as soon as we did that, during a hearing, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, declared that red flag would be dead on arrival in the Senate. So that was good. And keep in mind, all of this is going on the same time we're fighting for constitutional carry. So this is proof that we can win if we are the loudest voice in the room. The Republican leadership wanted gun control. We forced constitutional carry. So just make sure nobody gets discouraged. But yeah, going forward, red flag laws are the biggest threat. One of the big reasons is because it's essentially legalized bribery at this point, thanks to the Cornyn-Murphy compromise that passed back in, I think it was June. The federal government has basically granted billions of dollars for state legislatures to pass red flag laws in the states because they don't think they can get it done at the federal level. So now they're just kind of dangling money like a carrot on a stick for legislatures to pass gun control. So that's one reason that it's dangerous. If you go to the next slide. Another thing with red flag laws, it's really just a thinly veiled scheme to just outright confiscate guns. It's not taking other weapons and knives and stuff like that from dangerous people. It's not removing dangerous people from society that can't be trusted to not harm humans. They only want guns. So that's the main thing. If you go to the next slide. And red flag laws are very ripe for abuse. And it really depends on how the final language is written. But in many instances in different states that have these laws, I think there's over 17 right now, an estranged ex-wife or girlfriend or somebody like that, if there's a bad breakup in a marriage or relationship, if they want to seek revenge on their spouse or lover, they can just call in threats and they can have their guns taken away. A judge can have a secret hearing ex parte orders to remove your guns without you having any knowledge that this is going on, that you can't defend yourself. You go to the next slide. And red flag laws, they're very dangerous because it puts law enforcement, who already have a difficult job as it is, in these dangerous situations where they are the ones that are supposed to actually show up and take the firearms. And we had one extreme case in Maryland a few years back where officers, they showed up at somebody's house. I think it was around 5 a.m. It was still dark outside. Guy heard banging on his door. It sounded like people were trying to kick his door down, and I think they actually did. And he had his gun drawn. I believe he shot at the officers because he didn't know who it was. Well, that didn't end well. So we don't need to put our officers in situations like that. If you go to the next slide. Okay, that skips several slides. Huh. Okay, but ultimately with red flag laws, there's no due process involved. You don't get to face your accuser in court, and it's the financial burden and everything it's on you to try to fight to get your guns back, and that can be a very costly and time-consuming thing. So, man, I'm really kind of bummed that the other slides didn't show up. So, one of our top legislative priorities moving forward is to ban red flag laws in the state of Texas. So that way, they can never be enforced here, or enacted rather. And if there's ever a federal red flag law, then obviously it's banned in the state of Texas. But more importantly, our primary legislation coming up for the 23 session is going to be a Second Amendment Preservation Act. And I don't know how many people here are aware of the so-called Second Amendment Sanctuary Bill that passed in 2021. But it really is nothing more than window dressing. It has a lot of loopholes. The feds can still come in and enforce it. But the idea was that it was supposed to ban any gun control that passed from the Biden administration moving forward. And it removes state funding from municipalities who go against our Constitution essentially, and enforces this kind of gun control. But the feds can still provide the agents, the feds can provide the funding and the resources. So what does it really do? I mean, especially when you have cities like San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, with these bloated budgets. I mean, they're not going to care about that type of stuff. So we want to actually pass a true Second Amendment Preservation Act with teeth that actually empowers sheriffs and law enforcement to lock up federal agents in jail if they dare tread on the rights of law-abiding gun owners here in the state of Texas. And then second, or I guess third, constitutional carry cleanup. That's one of the things, as I alluded to earlier, there's for the age that we need to fix, the campus carry. And even with campus carry, to kind of expand on that a little bit, it's not just 18 and 20-year-old students. It's, in many cases, it's parents going to visit their child that they're forced to disarm, leave their firearm in a car, which is where most thefts happen for firearms. That's how a lot of criminals obtain firearms, is from cars. So why would we have that dangerous policy in place for law-abiding citizens? So we want to get that cleaned up. The LCRA carry, as I mentioned before, we also want to clean up the door buster language, which is the 30-05, 30-06, 30-07, which basically says that you've got a $200 max penalty if you accidentally pass one of those signs that, say you can't open carry or concealed carry or carry at all when you go into a private establishment. What we want to do is we want to remove that penalty, and basically if you accidentally walk past it and then the store owner, if they somehow see your firearm, if they ask you to leave and you leave, you're fine. If you refuse, then it's just a normal trespassing law. That's the way it is in most states. I'm not aware of any other state where they have all of this crazy signage that's required to go on the store windows and stuff like that. So we want to clean that up, and I think that's one of the better ways that we can also kind of start attacking all of the gun-free zone issues, is by getting rid of that penalty, because all of these things are just discouraging people to disarm themselves. And we wonder why we get these mass shootings where nobody can defend themselves. Everybody's just a sitting duck. And then, oh yeah, so I do have petitions for banning red flag over here. I'll go ahead and get them passed around. But like I said earlier, we actually deliver every single petition to your lawmakers. So these will be going to the Capitol at some point this next session. And it's basically just instructing your elected officials to oppose, not just oppose red flag, but to pass a law to ban it, ban red flag in Texas. So your information is very important for that. We deliver all of those. And then, of course, it also gets you on our mailing, our email list, so that way we can keep you up to date with fights going on in the legislature, because a lot of our calls to action that go out for people to either write their lawmakers, fill out a postcard, sign a petition, make a phone call, maybe even show up at the Capitol, depending on what's going on with the fight. That's how you find out, and that's how we utilize your information. So please, please, please sign up. Other than that, I do have some Texas gun rights membership brochures that set up on a table outside in the lobby area. I've also got some free swag, got free bumper stickers, lapel pins. I have shirts and hats. It's free, suggested donation of at least $10, but otherwise it's free if you don't have the cash or don't want to, I know times are tight right now with inflation and Biden inflation and everything, but we've got that out back, and I think that's all I had on my remaining slides, so I'll leave the rest of the time for questions.